Good afternoon. I hope you had a good coffee break and you're ready to continue the sessions. My name is Jan Mustavoy. I'm from Harmonic, and today I would like to share with you some of the experience that we have in DTT deployments around the world. My presentation will present to you some considerations regarding the deployment of DTT, what countries been facing, dilemmas that they had, how did they resolve it. I will give you some examples from projects in Russia, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, South Africa, and Italy, just to give you a few directions, a few examples of deployments and the difficulties that some of them had, and the takeaways. Harmonic has a lot of experience around the world. You can see in green the countries that we have been involved in the DTT deployment. When I say involved, I mean we are providing the head-end, the multiplexing, the compression of the video, the creation of the multiplexes in the head-end, in the regional head-ends, and the delivery of the multiplexes to the towers. In total, we did already more than 50 projects in more than 40 countries around the world, and I couldn't count exactly the numbers, but tens of thousands of transmitters are fed by our solutions around the world. So you can see our activities in very big countries like Russia that have 5,000 transmitting sites, and even small countries like Taiwan or other countries that are very small deployments. So we have the experience of small scale and very big scale deployments with unique requirements. About the considerations, when a country is about to deploy a digital terrestrial network, there is always a dilemma. Once there was a DVB-T or T2, like it happened, for example, in Russia. They started with DVB-T, then switched to T2. And there are also thoughts about, do I really need to go to SFN, maybe MFN, what's better? And I would like to mention a few things that really influence the implementation cost and the operation cost. By the way, about DVB-T and T2, of course, these days this dilemma is less and less relevant because the countries are obviously going to T2 if they're a greenfield. But for example, in Georgia, they are still thinking about, even though they're going to deploy DVB-T2 for local stations, small broadcasters in a city, they might give them the ability to transmit in DVB-T because they don't have a lot of channels to put in the MUX. So let me go over the considerations and the pros and cons with the SFN and MFN and what are the consequences. So SFN is very efficient when you have a flat terrain, when you want to cover big areas with population. And of course, it was designed in order to have to save or to have benefit from your frequency resource utilization. It's very good when you have the same content around your country, and the difficulties become more and more severe when you have to change the content in regions or in cities, and also keep the SFN. This affects severely your distribution costs, especially when you want to go over satellite. With MFN, these difficulties don't exist, but it's not so friendly for the frequency utilization. I would like to remind you that if you choose to go to SFN, you have to maintain your synchronization, and for this, in DVB-T, there is this MIP insertion, this MIP packet, and in DVB-T2, there is the T2MI format, which is not a format that is very friendly for distribution like the MPEG transport stream. It's a data PID, and if you want to process it, like for example, insert local content or do local advertisement. You have to open the packaging of the T2MI and somehow maintain it, or do PLP replacement, and it's more difficult techniques, and it increases the cost of your network and implementation. So the biggest thing that is impacted is the money, and the money is both CapEx and OpEx. The difficulties arise in SFN, when you go to SFN, when you have to insert regional content or regional advertisement, as I mentioned, with processing of the T2MI and maintaining the SFN. Sometimes you want to do DTH and DTT hybrid network to reuse your satellite distribution for both set-top box or satellite reception at the home, and also for the DTT. Otherwise, you will have to double the capacity on the satellite. Some countries would like also to continue the analog transmission in parallel with the DTT, because they did not complete on time the switch off. Not all the population acquire the set-top boxes or integrated TVs. It's very difficult to reuse the T2MI format for decoding at the tower to feed the analog transmitter in parallel. In some cases, you will have to double, if you don't have the more expensive technology of processing the T2MI at the tower, you will have to double your capacity on the satellite for the old distribution as well. There is an impact when you have a mountain terrain and you want to build a good coverage in your SFN. You will need more transmitting sites than you had in the analog transmission with more gap fillers. And all this impacts the operation cost and the CapEx, the equipment that you need to put and the amount of processing that you need to add to the network. And you make something out of something simple, you make it very difficult. Affects also reliability and other parameters. So when you go MFN, it's, of course, most of these problems are not existing. It's very easy to insert local content, regional ads when you have a regular transport stream multiplex as opposed to a T2MI signal. You can very easily implement a hybrid DTT and DTH platform. But of course, you will not utilize the frequency in the most efficient way. Let me give you a few examples. This is Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is a very big country. You can see here 15 or 16 different regions. In each region, they have their own local TV channels on top of the national ones. And the territory of this country is bigger than Western Europe, but the population is only 17 million, meaning that there is no point of covering the whole country with transmitters. Okay, most of the country, no people are receiving, no people to receive the signal. So the solution and the way that Kazakhstan decided to go is, and some more data. They wanted to have 100 TV channels over DTH and 30 TV channels over DTT, and I will also mention over-the-top platform. By the way, the three colors that they have in their logo represent the three platforms that they launched in parallel: satellite, terrestrial, and over-the-top. All this in order to provide the population the digital television. So the solution that they chose is to go for a hybrid DTT and DTH system, meaning that some of the population will not be able to receive a DTT signal, only from, and the digital signal will come from the satellite as a DTH. The DTT, the DVB-T2, actually standard, they decided to go with MFN because they didn't want to invest in covering large territories, just the population areas, and actually maintain this more or less the same locations of the analog transmitters. So we built together with the Castele Radio 3 main uplink sites in Astana, Almaty, and Uralsk. So this first stage provided The minute we launched it, the 100 channels on DTT for the country. 15 DTT regional headings for local content insertion, local advertisement, and this covered all the needs of, the majority of the needs of the local broadcasters, their source of revenue for advertisement. And also we launched together with them conditional access. Some of the programs will be free to view, and some of them will be with conditional access as pay TV on the platform. In total, the number of sites that were transmitting digital terrestrial DVB-T2 signal is 800 transmitting sites. And in each site, we are actually receiving the 3 transponders from the satellite. This is a regular transport stream. And we are multiplexing them to 2 DVB-T2 maxes, gathering the content from all 3 satellite transponders and feeding to terrestrial transmitters. This is some pictures from Kazakhstan. And in Italy, this is a not so recent project. This is a couple of years ago. Just an overview, Italy has a lot of DTT. It's a very successful DVB adopter of the terrestrial. You have RAI, Mediaset, La Sette, Telecom Italy, and another operator, D3, and the standard is still DVB-T. They're thinking, of course, of moving to T2, but at that time, we did a project with them for DVB-T. Italy is around 1,500 towers, and it has 20 regions. The problem of RAI was that RAI 3 have 20 different versions. They have the regional version of RAI 3. And in order to maintain the SFN, in the regular way, in the standard way, they had to, I mean, if there was no new technology, they would have to uplink the full multiplex, the full SFN multiplex of the RAI programs 20 times, because you change the content and you need to resynchronize the stream. So what we developed and installed in RAI is what we call deterministic SFN remultiplexing, meaning that you need to distribute over satellite only the bandwidth and the program of RAI 3. We take care of the synchronization of RAI 3 to the basic national stream, and we replace the programs while keeping the SFN. This saved them a lot of satellite resources and enabled them to complete very quickly the conversion of most of the regions to SFN. I mean, this example represents an investment in CapEx, in equipment, in order to save OpEx, in order to save operational cost, which is the distribution. I will not go through this diagram. I think I don't have time for this, but the point here is that we save them instead of 400 megabits required for retransmission of all the 20 regions. It's about, they needed only 100 megabits per second over satellite. Not far away from here, across the Black Sea, we have Ukraine. Ukraine is a very good example for a very fast and quick deployment of a digital terrestrial television. Maybe here in Turkey, we'll also face a tight schedule to implement very quickly the platform, at least the first stage, in order to be able to start the analog switch off on the borders. In this example, the network operator Xeon Bud had very fast and smart decisions, which enabled him to deploy very quickly and efficiently the DTT in Ukraine. So we're talking about here a lot of TV stations, something that reminds the situation here in Turkey as well, with a lot of local TV stations. So 13 national, 34 regional, and also city-level local. 180 main transmitting sites. This was the size of the project, and it has 25 regions. The decisions that were made was to implement a DVB-T2 network, which included 4 MUXes. 3 of them were SFN because they included only national TV channels, which were the same without any changes in the regions. And they provided, in the 4th MUX, they decided to go MFN. So meaning it will have a multiplexing of 4 channels that will come from Kiev, and also enabled 4 local channels to be remultiplexed very easily and transmitted in MFN in each one of the 180 transmitting sites. So in total 4 MUXes, 1 with regional content, and this one they decided to do MFN because it's the most efficient and quickest way. The distribution was over satellite with DVB-S2, and here we used the multi-transport stream over DVB-S2 technique in order to use the satellite resource in the most efficient way. So all the 4 MUXes actually were distributed over 1 transponder. The parameters that they chose for the T2 were relatively low in their bit rate, and in total this enabled to put all the 4 MUXes, well actually it's 3.5 MUXes in 1 transponder. So also the OpEx is very efficient in this deployment in this network. The time for deployment was very quick. From the time that Zeon Bud was awarded the license to operate the terrestrial network until it was on air, completed, it took only 1 year. And this included all the negotiation with the vendors, the planning, the purchasing of the equipment, shipment, installation, everything in 1 year. So this is a good example for very fast and efficient deployment together with smart decisions. Okay, mentioned this as well. So this is an SFN, MFN hybrid DTT or DVB-T2 network. MultiChoice Africa. MultiChoice is a leading DTH or DBS operator all across Africa, based in South Africa, and they wanted to expand their business to DTT. So they're working with the local governments of many of the Africa countries. You can see here only phase 1. The phase 2 should cover about 14 or 15 countries in Africa. And they offer them their platform for distribution, for exchange for the license to operate the DTT, and take and bear all the expenses of building the DTT network. And of course, including in the DTT transmission, their local TV channels. The first ways also included 2 MUXes. This is currently what they're continuing to deploy. In the future, they will expand to 2 more MUXes. They will probably be awarded with 2 more frequencies. But the point here is that this is an SFN network, and in this case, they had to insert in one of the MUXes also 4 local programs. So 1 MUX is not touched, and the second MUX in SFN should include or be changed to include 4 local TV programs. In this case, we cooperated with Enensys that developed a very unique technology for replacing, actually using the PLPs, the physical air pipes, in the T2MI in order to replace them, use it in order to insert the regional content. And in total, the bandwidth saving here was about 400 megabits out of the original required 600 megabits per second over satellite. This is huge capacity requirements. Okay, so very, very big saving, and this is MultiChoice, which is a DTH operator and has the transponders, so it's a lot of money for them as well. Russia. Russia is a huge, huge territory. It has, but on top of having, it's a big, big territory, it also has many regions. It has 83 regions, and it has, in the analog, it operates, or RTRN, the network operator, operates 6,500 transmitter sites for the analog. In digital, they planned 5,000 locations for the DTT, and they are launching 3 multiplexes in SFN. Maybe they will change their mind and do the 3rd one in MFN, but currently the 2 first MUXes are deployed in SFN. The problem with the main problem with the Russia deployment is that they did not deploy all 3 MUXes at the same time. And they started with the first MUX and the second and then the second MUX only later on. You can see the timetable here and the deployment. The second problem was that they started with DVB-T, and after 2 years decided to switch to T2. So they still have regions in DVB-T that they need to complete this year, converting them to T2. So it's a lot of a project with a very long duration, and because of that, they also got hit with the technology changes in the middle of the process, and they had to react and change the requirements and change the equipment and do new planning and new purchasing. In addition to that, they have a different number of regions and compared to the number of big cities. They have more or less around 200 big cities. Why it's so important? Because of the broadcasters and their source of revenue, which is advertisement. When you build a regional headend and you put a gateway to synchronize your SFN, you build it in your 83 regions, but actually they need more than this unique streams because they want to insert advertisement, change their content, change their program, and change the transport stream in more places. So they're still struggling with this issue, and they try to develop a technology with some companies that will have the ability to insert in SFN or process the T2MI signal to insert advertisement at the towers in order to keep the SFN and save them the distribution cost, because it's not about saving bandwidth on satellite. They don't have the capacity on satellite to have 200 different versions. I'm not mentioning the 83 different regions. So here the technologies of replacing content in the T2MI stream is essential for this size of the country, and end of this year they will start to implement the technology of PLP replacement in order to be able to regionalize the MAX 1 content. In addition to this, they have also 9 time zones, so they're distributing 5 or 6 times at least the same content already. So the satellite resource is gone, okay, and they need to find ways to do this. And all this is mainly because of the SFN requirement and the regionalization requirement from the broadcasters. Of course, I mean, if you are able to build an IP terrestrial network to the towers, you don't hit this problem, but you hit another problem of very high cost of building an IP or microwave network directly to the towers. MAX 2 started in last quarter of 2013, and in deployment in 2014. All the second MAX is based on our distribution solution to the towers. There are talks now lately where they were published. I didn't mention them on the slide, that maybe they will move their analog switch off to maybe 2018. Probably on the borders they will have to switch it off, but they are not, probably will not be able to complete everything, at least until 2016, 17, the digital deployment, and maybe the analog will remain until 2018. So lessons learned from this, a lot. I mean, don't deploy the MAXes one by one. The regulator, the government, should define the channels for the frequencies for all the MAXes as soon as possible together to enable the network to be very efficient, and think about very carefully when you're defining the frequency plan, and consider mixing SFN and MFN for a solution. So to summarize the presentation, the move from analog to digital brings several programs to live in the same MAX, and they need to consider each other and the requirements. The terrain and the population, the number of the regions are also influencing your network design. You should agree with the broadcasters, its commercial needs. You need to understand if he needs local advertisement, original content in advance. The SFN frequency plan from Geneva 2006, does it serve the needs of all the countries? Maybe they will need to do some recalculation again for several countries. And you need to understand in advance your cost. And there are a lot of impact. There's a lot of impact on the CAPEX and the OPEX when you go different directions. And plan all your MAXes at once. Otherwise, you will be continuously building your network, and will need to react to technology changes. So do this as quick as possible. That's it. Thank you.